Greetings, everyone. Dale Parrish, host COS Today. Welcome to our broadcast this evening. Along with my co-host, Ken Kashuba. Ken's our state communications coordinator for Indiana. How you doing, Ken?
Doing well, thanks. Doing well.
Good. We neither one have any green on tonight, so sorry about that, folks.
Yeah, I thought about a bow in my hair, but I don't have enough of that either. So
Actually, my whole screen is completely green. You just can't see it. See, it's all
good point. Yeah,
behind.
nice save, Dale. Nice save.
So I thought I might throw that in anyway. Well, listen, folks.
My excuse is I don't have an inkling of Irish in me. So
I don't either. Well, folks, tonight we're going to continue our discussion on tariffs, so I want to get right into it. This is part 2 of my interview with Brett Sterling, one of our contributors. He's also the state director for Convention of States, Missouri. And this is part 2, so let's jump right into that. And we got a big lineup for you tonight, so let's just get started with and bring Brett on here and get going on this part 2 of Understanding Tariffs. Well, greetings again, everyone. Dale Parrish, host COS Today. Well, we're ready for part 2 of our very interesting conversation on the topic of tariffs, understanding tariffs, with our friend Brett Sterling from Missouri. So he's sticking around for part 2, so let's bring him on here and we'll get going on part 2. Hello, Brett, again.
Hello, Dale, again.
So, Brett, you've taken us pretty much through the history of tariffs and what role that they have played in our history and even leading up to the Constitution. So, a very, very important role, very major role, I might say. So let's pick it up and go on from that point. Okay.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate it, and it's great to be back with everybody. And this is kind of like what we discussed in the run up to the call. There are tariff and trade policy. There are semesters taught about this, and thankfully, we're not going to do that here. One, because we don't have time. Two, right. I don't have the knowledge. So it works out. So hopefully, we'll as soon as I run out of what I've studied here, we'll be at the end of the show. So we'll see.
Okay. All right.
But so we went through a lot of the history, and I think we really need the background of what tariffs are. And again, what tariffs are, it's a tax that one country imposes on the on the exports from another country, and it can be either used to raise revenues. It could be to protect native owned businesses. It could be to solve trade imbalances, or could be used as leverage over another country. And it's I think when we get into the specifics of President Trump's plan, I think the latter, the leverage over another country, is really what he's using tariffs for. But first, let's kind of see what kind of numbers that we're talking about tariff wise. And so I think we have a couple graphs that we could maybe go through and take a look and see exactly what's happened. So this is from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which is a division part of the U.S. Census Bureau, and it shows basically since for the last 5 years what imports and exports. U.S. exports is the blue bar. U.S. imports is the orange bar. Now, like in 2024, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the total U.S. exports was approximately $3.2 trillion, and in total imports, the United States, the value of the goods and services that the United States imported in 2024 was valued about 4.1 trillion. That resulted in a $918 billion trade deficit.
So the difference between those two, that's the deficit or surplus if it was the other way around, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Or yeah, this in this instance, it's a deficit. If the net exports of the United States were greater than the net imports of to the United States, then that would be a trade surplus.
Okay.
So in a lot of, I guess one thing we need to discuss, okay, well, is a trade deficit good or is it bad? And I guess the question is yes, or the answer is yes.
Of course.
Of course. So there is a cost from not having manufacturing in your home country, and that cost is in jobs. The cost is in tax revenues from the government standpoint, and possibly if the balance becomes too much for the wrong reasons, then that does harm the home country's economy and the amount of prosperity that we enjoy. Now, I say for the wrong reasons because there's a concept called comparative advantage, and what comparative advantage is, and this is, could be between two businesses, could be between two countries, between two states, or whatever. Comparative advantage is a concept that says that another country can produce a good or service better and more economically and possibly a superior product to what the home country can. And the importing of that superior product at a lower cost from a foreign country into the home country actually benefits the home country's economy better in more, and is better for the consumer because the consumer can purchase a superior product than what could be made domestically at a lower price. So that in itself is good. For instance, if you look at like between two different states, Missouri has an agricultural base, but probably not as much as like Indiana, definitely not as much as Iowa. So we can produce corn in Missouri, and we do. However, we can't produce it maybe as efficiently or to the same quantity as what Iowa can. So is it better for Missouri to produce corn at a potentially higher cost, or is it better for Missouri to import corn from Iowa that is more can produce it more efficiently and economically at a lower price? Where's that benefit? Well, it's not all one way. There's a balance there, but that comparative advantage does exist.
Okay.
So basically, when we look at, and we can look at the next graph here, this is an example of just new foreign investment since President Trump came into office at this point about 6 weeks ago, which is really pretty amazing. CMA CGM, that's an ocean container shipping company. They recently announced just last week a $20 billion investment in the United States. Taiwan Semiconductor, which produces the what I've heard are the best and the fastest computer chips on the planet, and that's really what is being needed for these massive server farms and to support artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and we don't produce a lot. We don't do chips very well here in this country, right?
We do not, and hopefully some of that is changing. But I think it's going to be, our move into that market is going to be more by having foreign corporations produce chips here.
Yeah.
And that's what this $100 billion investment is from Taiwan Semiconductor. Also, SoftBank, OpenAI, and Oracle are investing a total of $500 billion. Now, this isn't all in one lump sum. I mean, they're not writing a check for $500 billion and saying, here you go.
Right.
So this is over a period of time. Most of it, though, is coinciding with the 4 years of President Trump's term here, because they understand dealing with President Trump, and it's going to be a favorable business environment, and they want to make this investment whenever it's most advantageous to them.
Okay.
And so, SoftBank is also investing another $100 billion. Look, DAMAC Properties, which committed to a new $20 billion investment in the United States. That is a Saudi-based company. Apple, interestingly enough, because a lot of their products are produced over in China, in Japan, and Taiwan, in order to avoid the tariffs being imposed, say, on China. Apple announced that they're a $500 billion investment in U.S. plant expansion to produce phones and computers and other products here domestically. Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman had also pledged, and he's the part of the Sovereign Investment Fund. I mean, he's the director of the Sovereign Investment Fund as in Saudi Arabia, as being the head of state, has pledged a $600 billion investment in the United States. There's you can see the Indian Prime Minister has increased, committed to increasing to $500 billion investment here. Honda's moving part of their hybrid car production from Mexico to Indiana, your state. And
yes, I think that's I know they're already producing. The name of the city escapes me. I believe it's east of Indianapolis right now, but I don't know. So I don't know if this is a new production facility or maybe an addition onto what they have there now.
I think it's an expansion of existing facilities, but it is going to be a movement of production from Mexico into Indiana, which is a good thing. So basically, just the Trump White House has totaled all this up and has claimed that they've secured $3 trillion in new foreign investment just since January the 20th.
Wow.
I mean that's significant, and just
sure seems significant to me. I don't know how.
Yeah. Well, I guess and I mean, I can't relate to these numbers here either, but if you put it in context, the total GDP of the United States is 17, 18, 19 trillion dollars a year. And so this is literally, what is that? Not quite. It's not like it's 10%, but it's about a 6% of the total economy.
Yeah.
So that's pretty big.
Wow.
So, we go to the next, and this kind of goes through a little bit of the history of tariffs, and you can see, like what we discussed in the first show, the federal government was primarily funded by excise taxes and import duties up until 1913. And you can see that indicated here on this graph, because coming up to up into the mid 19 teens, you can see that it was very that the tariffs that were imposed by the United States, the tariff rate was very, very high. There was a spike there post depression that probably did a little bit more to prolong the depression than what it did to solve it, but ultimately World War II solved it. But hey, that's another show. But you can see that since 1950, the tariff rate is relatively low, somewhere between 5 and 10% in an overall average tariff. So it's important to note that tariffs that other countries impose on United States exports have historically been much higher than what we impose on other countries to import their goods and services. So
these are this is the trend and rates that we impose.
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Right.
And foreign government tariff rates are much higher, and they have been historically.
Okay.
So that's why whenever President Trump says, "Hey, well, we're getting tired of getting ripped off from other countries," well, that's kind of what he's referring to.
All right. All right.
And so I think the next slide will, and this is looking at what President Trump is looking at doing, and this is a moving target. So the numbers have changed, and the timing have changed. As of this show, there's been a 30-day hold put on the imposition of tariffs in the automobile industry. So this is moving and changing all the time. But as of right now, the imports of Canadian energy products, there's going to be a 10% tariff there. Other Canadian imports there's going to be a 25% tariff. And Canada has threatened and is ready to impose a 25% tariff on approximately $155 billion of U.S.-made goods. That's $155 billion per year. Tariffs on Chinese exports are increasing from 10% currently to 20%, so doubling there. And China has pledged to retaliate with a 10 to 15% tariff on U.S. agricultural exports. That the number there depends on the specific commodity. And then China is also restricting exports of rare earth materials to the United States. And these are the rare earth materials that are used in computer chip making, in electronics, in the defense industry. That's very, very key. This also has implications of the Ukrainian war, because in the Ukraine does have a good supply of these rare earth minerals, but they don't have the technology or the resources to mine it. And so that's really what the linchpin was of the security agreement that Vladimir Zelensky rejected in that very vocal presser in the White House, but seems to be more amenable to signing that deal here now. And then also goes to, there's rare earth minerals, large deposits in Greenland. And so this kind of goes to, wanting to, the U.S. basically purchasing Greenland. So there's multiple tentacles here. Okay. And then, specific with Mexico intends to match U.S. tariff increases. And they're also increasing the regulation of U.S. owned countries. And so this is, posturing going back and forth. And so, like I said, it is a moving target. So it's anybody's guess where all this lands. So that kind of gets us to where tariffs are, the current state of play here. So I guess if you want, we can go ahead and delve a little bit more into specifically President Trump's tariff plan, if you'd like there, Dale.
Let's I tell you what. All right, Brett. Well, that sounds very good at what you've done here. Now that kind of gives us some more in the picture of what has happened with our country and tariffs over the years. So why don't we call it a wrap here on this segment? And because I'm anxious to hear what you got on Trump's plan here, because that's what we're getting at, right?
No, absolutely. I think that'd be great, and we can dive in on the next show, specifically into President Trump's plan and the whys and the wherefores and hopefully the strategy.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you very much. See you in a bit.
Dale. All right, sounds good.
Well, I don't know. Do we understand anything more about tariffs?
Just that, as they say, it's complicated. It's complicated. But
you've heard me say this before. I'm still confused, but I think at a higher level than I was before.
It is for sure. It is a tool, and I think that we'll know a little bit more about it as things kind of unravel here. But I
Yeah.
did want to clear up a little bit that Honda plant is in uh,
Is it
Greenfield.
Greenfield or Greensburg?
It's in Greensburg, and it is an existing plant, and they are going to start building the Civic there. So
Okay.
uh,
Okay. So it is an expansion of existing.
yeah, the plant. I forget when it was built, but that's been there for a while, and adding the Civic to it, that's a real popular car. So
Right. Okay. Well,
yeah,
that's good. That's more jobs, more jobs. So
yeah.
cool. Great. Well, Ken, I'm sure you've heard of Doge, haven't you?
I have.
Department of Government Efficiency.
If you haven't heard of Doge by now, I think you probably probably have a big rock someplace that you've been under.
You've been under some. You've been somewhere. That's right for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Gary Harbaugh, another one of our contributors, who has been doing the Debt Avalanche series. I asked him to. He's also kind of tracking Doge and keeping up with Doge. Well, he pointed out to us that Doge is now part of the national debt clock. So I asked Gary to give us a little piece on the Doge addition to the national debt clock. So let's take a look at that and listen to what Gary has to tell us about that. All right.
Good. Yep.
Hi, it's Gary with Convention of States. I want to give a little update on the U.S. debt clock. As you can see, the national debt has surpassed $36.5 trillion. Federal spending so far this year, about $7 trillion. Tax revenue, $5 trillion. So we've added more than $2 trillion to the national debt this year. But what I really want to talk about is this new number. You'll notice right here we have the Doge clock, and the Doge clock is now up to about $163 billion, and that is the real-time savings objective from reducing waste, fraud, and abuse in federal government agencies. So the amount that's been identified so far is over $163 trillion. I'm going to talk a little more about that later. That's a lot of money, but it's nowhere near what we hope to gain from Doge. I understand the objective is maybe 300 billion, so we're more than halfway there. But we're only, a month and a half maybe into the work of Doge, so we've got more than a year to go, and I have high hopes, at least, that a great deal more savings can be realized from the elimination of waste, fraud, and abuse in federal government agencies. That's it on the debt clock for now. But Doge, take a look at it if you want to see how Doge is having an effect on federal spending.
You're muted there, Dale.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
It's all right. That's okay. An interesting add to that debt clock, that's for sure.
Yeah. Now, this is Gary did this, I think, a couple weeks ago, I think, didn't he? Or a week or so, over a week ago.
Yeah.
I believe I tried to look at it while we were watching this, but I couldn't get it on my phone. I think that Doge number is over 200 million now.
I believe so. I haven't seen the update on that myself,
but and it keeps going up, obviously. But very interesting. I didn't know that existed until Gary pointed it out to us. So that's good. That's good.
We had a question pop up from one of our regular viewers, David Nally. I want to put that up. He said, "When did we start income tax? And is that when tariffs dropped?" And we actually, the income tax actually started during the Civil War, but it wasn't actually a permanent tax until the ratification of the 16th Amendment, and that was in 1913. So I
was going to say that was in that was Woodrow Wilson, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe that was Woodrow Wilson, and that wouldn't
Yeah.
be when tariffs dropped. But
Yeah.
that part of the question I don't have an answer for, David. But that's when it started officially, was in 1913 as a permanent tax anyway. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, Ken, while we got you on here, why don't you take a minute or two here and tell us about that QR code up in the corner up there.
Yeah, that QR code is the support QR code for COS Today. It's basically a way that you can show us you're a supporter of the program, put in your name and your email address, and we'll give you access to the platform, which basically has a whole bunch of our contributors, segments, and other types of websites and interesting information, all along with a platform where you can interact with other COS Today supporters. So smartphone will get you there. And if not, I'll go ahead and post a link in the chat if you'd rather go to a URL to do that and you don't have your smartphone handy.
Okay. All right. Good deal. Well, staying with the topic of tariffs, another one of our contributors, David Punt out of Minnesota. Dave's been doing our Dave's Daily Dose. And he's been providing us some very, very interesting segments. Now, the segments that he's been providing us have been audio segments on a podcast that he does, but he also does a radio program up in Missouri or Minnesota, excuse me. And he appears on this radio program, I think it's Broken Record Radio, and I'm trying to think of the gentleman's name, Jim Parks, I believe it is.
Yes, Jim.
Yes, is it Jim Parks?
Yeah.
So he sent us a clip of a little discussion that they had on tariffs, and it kind of brought the discussion a little closer to understanding how tariffs work. So I thought Dave sent it to us, and I thought we would play that as our segment on Dave's Daily Dose. So let's take a look at that.
I want to talk about tariffs. Prime Minister Trudeau, is that his title, or was the governor? No, he's a prime minister.
He's prime minister, yeah.
See what Trump can do to you? He says it was a dumb thing to do. And from his perspective, maybe he's right, huh?
Well, it's hard to tell because, tariffs are kind of a blunt tool. I mean, they just kind of raise prices indiscriminately just based on which way they're going. I mean, it's imports or exports. If you put a tariff on an export, then it's just stuff going out. If you put it on imports, it's stuff coming in.
Well, you don't put a tariff on your own export, though. I mean, some other country would do that. You would
somebody
put a
else
tariff on imports.
Right.
Because the balance of trade is at issue. And why that's important, I don't know. Other than if, for example, with China, there's an imbalance in trade. It means they're holding a lot of dollars that they could wield in a powerful way. This is past economics 101, though, and it's difficult to figure out. For example, if you're a company that manufactures something that Canada buys a lot of, and it's important to your business, you export to Canada, and they slap a tariff on you so that your price is no longer competitive in Canada, and your sales go down, do you adjust by raising your prices for people who buy your product in the United States? Don't a lost business, because it's lost business is what it is.
Right. Or you don't make that product anymore. Or you I mean, there's still a lot of choices. I mean, it's not a lock.
See, that's why I think this is a finesse thing, because you can balance this between different kinds of products in different export arrangements, because the export business is different than the tariff business. I mean, you're working with people who transport the goods and with customs to various countries. It is incredibly complex to figure this out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I was just looking at, and I was thinking, I just got back from Paris last spring, and as on our way out, we stopped in the duty free shop, and I thought, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, I'll get one of my favorite bottles of wine, and I paid 62 euros for a bottle of Chateau Patai, and it's a really really nice wine. It was delicious, and 62 euros.
What does it go with?
It goes with anything that's fried or baked.
Oh,
I mean, mostly meats. Goes. It's a Cabernet. It's a Cabernet blend.
it's a red wine then.
Yeah, it's a red wine. Cabernet Merlot and Petit Verdot.
Could tell from the name because I don't look at that high on the shelves when I go into a liquor store, and I don't speak French. So
Yes, but the Chateau Bataille is an individual chateau or an individual winery.
Chateau means house.
Vineyard. Yes, it is.
It's a
But-
house wine then.
But anyway, you go into the duty free shop and you pay the price that it is supposed to be the landed price. You pay, and their estimation at the time was that it was going to be the equivalent of 62 euros.
The vice
Or-
president the other day made an interesting comment about duty-free shops. He said, we create them in airports so that
Mhm.
people could buy things at a lower price, right?
Right.
Then
Yes.
they accept that. Have you ever shopped in an airport gift shop?
I was just about to explain that because I paid 62 euros
Yeah.
or $66 for this bottle, and I could have got it for $62 over here. Now, if the system works, then you can buy on your way out of Paris, you would buy something that was going to be really expensive in Paris,
Yeah.
but it was much cheaper in the United States. So you would save yourself a couple of bucks.
So that suggests that we are not tariffing French wines.
Well, we are.
Well, wait a minute. If you can
We
buy
are.
it cheaper here than there,
Now it's getting
see,
confusing.
this is what makes it. Okay, take for example car parts.
Yeah. Okay.
Mexico, they make cars. In Canada, they make cars. They need
Sure.
parts, many of which are made in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So we ship a bunch of car parts to Mexico or to Canada, and now they're getting tariffed because we're tariffing cars coming back in the other direction. So those parts are actually being tariffed at least twice.
Sure.
And maybe more time. Maybe because they get assembled over there and then added to some other part back here, and then the finished part goes back to Canada. I don't know how you keep track of this stuff.
There was an NPR story that said that there was something like 8 tariffs on a particular part, and it was the harness part, the wire harness that went underneath the seat.
Mm-hmm.
But you still have the choice of whether or not to buy the car, and the individual car dealer has to figure that in so that otherwise he doesn't sell the car.
Well, that's
So
true. It's still up to the consumer what to buy and what not to buy.
Exactly.
In part upon price. And it's not like you're limited here. So if something from some country is tariffed and it's too high, you have all kinds of other choices here.
Mhm.
So
You
it
have
won't
another choice.
necessarily hurt your pocketbook.
That's the news.
I think we straightened that out.
I don't know, Ken.
Are you straightened out now?
I thought that was going to straighten me out, but I don't think so.
No. I think the ultimate goal of playing the game of tariff with these countries eventually is really to get to the point where both countries say, all right, we're not going to tariff anything. And of course, Trump's biggest goal, I think, is obviously to get people to bring their plants here or build it in America, bringing both jobs and allowing that to happen. So I think that's the obvious ultimate goal. And it's not something that happens overnight.
Right.
But it is a game. It is a game. In my mind, it's a game, and Trump plays it well. as we've seen, so.
But yeah. Was his name Jay Parks that was with David there?
Yeah.
Jim. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, he made a good point. It's very complicated, and where you and because some things you could have a high tariff on, some things a low tariff. So, but it balances out due to the exporting and importing of products. And it's not so cut and dried
No.
as across the board. But
Yeah.
I think the president's on the right track.
I think there's another graph. I saw it somewhere. I don't have the exact numbers. I wish I had taken a screenshot of the graph, but it certainly shows where the United States has been, as he said, taken advantage of for so many years, and the amount of tariffs on the United States that we've been footing the bill, a high bill, for a long time with a lot of countries, not just a couple, with a lot of countries have really been taking advantage, and we've been paying these tariffs, all along. So
Right.
it's to the point where he's saying that time is up. It's over. It's time to play fair. So I think that's the part. And I think, we as the people and Americans, we have to understand that it is complicated, but it's also something that we have to give it time. It's not something. I'm losing my mind watching these people, after 10, 11 days of being in office, they're wondering why the price of eggs isn't down already. And, hey, how come this isn't cheaper? And, hey, it took 4 years to get it where it is. So that takes some time.
Okay, let's move on. Now we just so everyone knows, we've got part 3 to go on the tariff topic. And that one we will be doing on the 31st of March on that broadcast. So we're not done with this topic. We're still hopefully we'll get it all clarified in part 3. Okay. In the meantime, we've got part 2 lined up here with another contributor of ours, Diana Tellis, who did part 1 of her interview with our two friends from Illinois, 2 COS friends from Illinois, and their approach to dealing with the opposition in Illinois, which primarily are Democrats. And so we played part 1 on our previous broadcast. So we're going to bring to you part 2 of that interview. I found it very interesting with these people from Illinois. They're good. They're good COS volunteers in Illinois. So I think they doing a good job for us. So let's listen to Diana's part 2 of Diana's interview with them. Okay.
Let me ask you this. Now, pretend that Doge isn't happening. I suppose the Democrats probably are not very happy with that, but maybe some of them are. Honestly, why wouldn't a Democrat care about wasteful spending? Honestly, they should be, just like you said, they live their lives just like we do. But how do you think they see, how would they apply the Convention of States and our effort with their vision of the federal government right now? Do they want to see it grow and grow and grow? Or do they also kind of look at it and go, well, I've got to walk this line, this ideological line that, my grandfather walked, my father walked, and now I'm walking because I'm a Democrat and that's what I do. Or which happens. We all do that. A lot of us do that, but in either party.
Right. I think you need to remember that you really can't cast them as one size fits all.
Yeah. Okay.
In my opinion, you're going to get 120 different answers to the question about how do you view the federal government and how do you view COS in Illinois, because we have 120. And it's important, if their hot button is fiscal restraint, okay. If it's term limits, okay. But you got to remind them, you got to weave it in the conversation that these amendments that come out of a convention of states stand on their own. So I've told them many times, hypothetically, if there's 9 amendments that come out of a convention of states, and the first 7 are on same subject rule, each law proposed stands on its own, and and you get down to the last 8 and 9 are term limits. And let's say they're a true blue Democrat and they really are not that excited about term limits. Do you realize, Mr. and Mrs. Legislator, you can vote yes on the first 7 and no on the last 2. It's important for them to know that, because if they don't feel the liberty of choice here, they're going to vote no on everything. And I heard somebody say once, you can take the furthest lefty legislator like Barry's rep is, and if you can get them to vote present instead of no, that's a win. So go ahead. I'll let you guys continue here.
Well, I was thinking about that term limit. I would argue with anybody that if you're in state legislature and you aspire to do something bigger, doesn't it
Right.
behoove us to want to see term limits and move these people out? Furthermore, I would prefer to see a term limit to be 24 years, and it sounds kind of long, but
I misspoke
you're just shaving off those career politicians, and the rest of them that are average 9 to 11 years get to stay and do their thing.
Right. And I misspoke.
Right, Diana, that's one of the arguments or positions that we take, and we refer to it as what's in it for me. So what's in it for that legislator may be the opportunity to run for Congress, run for federal senator, or it may be an opportunity for another member of their leadership, and that opens up leadership positions within their party here in Illinois.
Right.
So either way, it's a potential win for that legislator.
And see, I think that proves that the COS resolution is of value to Democrats, because if they don't want to go up to the next level of congressional politics, like Barry says, they can assume the committee heads of very powerful state committees and whatever. But when you let them know that, hey, the average incumbency in Congress is like 12 years in the House, and we're offering 24. It's not, I mean, you do need seasoned people to push the levers of government. But at the end of the day, you know, I going back to your earlier comment on fiscal restraint and overspending right now, I think most Democrats, that's not a hill they're going to die on. When you start seeing the Doge tracker amounts of money coming out and the 200 to 500 billion in Social Security payments to people between ages 100 and 150, the people get really upset about this, regardless of your political stripes, that you're funding fraud and abuse. My next question to the person that told me that yesterday after I read it or whatever was, is Pam Biondi going to pursue these people that have been banking Social Security checks on a dead relative for 30 years? I think that's prosecutable. So, you know, the Democrats really aren't that different, really, from the Republicans. They've just been trained to think a little differently. And you got to present them the array of ideas here that we're going after, and also let them know it's safe. Because at the end of the day, 38 states, 3/4 of Congress or the states is a high bar. That's why we proposed amending the Constitution over 10,000 times, and it's been successful 27, because it's a very high bar. But I always like to say, don't you think the eyes of the world will be on a convention of states to determine the question, can man truly govern himself, or does he need a tyrant? We say we can govern ourselves. Just like Mark McElroy talks about his favorite patriot in the field at the Bridge of Concord when the first shot was fired. So here we are, and I think the Dems aren't as difficult as we make it. This is a common sense mainstream issue. Many of us have kids and grandkids, or we have nephews and nieces. And I told one of my daughters tonight, we've been spending your entitlement money for years. You just don't know about it or didn't think about it. But when you get in your 50s, you're going to be mighty upset that what was supposed to be yours came to us through some wayward politicians.
When we go into these meetings, whether it's with a Republican or a Democrat, we're always bringing one or more constituents with us. And of course, we find them through the district dashboard. And what we're going to do is have talking points and an outline set ahead of time and reviewed at a time to make sure that this is a conversation that we want to be structured in a specific way. And when we meet with them, it's going to go off in different directions, certainly, but they put on their pants one leg at a time, just like all the rest of us do. And they're nothing to be afraid of.
Right. They're very polite in Ohio when we've reached out. We're always welcome. We get meetings with both Republicans and Democrats, and they've been polite, and we haven't been able to sign one on, but maybe there's something to be learned about that to not be afraid or intimidated by reaching out.
I think that's going to change in Ohio, which went 11 points for Trump, because how can you be willing to die on a hill of waste, fraud, and abuse? It's unwinnable. It's not normal. It's not in our country's DNA.
Right.
And by the way, don't forget to do your homework. Take 15 minutes. Go on the legislator's profile. One of the last calls we went on, she was engaged in mental health committees and some other things. You better believe that's going to be brought up as niceties, and maybe even more than that, on the front end of the call.
Right. Sure.
That's a sign of respect when you talk about, thank you for doing this. There's certain things you need to know what is close to their heart, and it's proper respect is what it is.
I would be curious. Do you think that their impression of Convention of States is, it's a conservative organization? We have national supporters that tend to lean to the right. And when they meet you and they listen, you bring them into the fold here, treat them like your peer, like there's no difference, not afraid. And we all deep down at the end of the day have the same things that are affecting our households. And that sounds like, in a nutshell, what I'm hearing.
Well, I mean, we still have a lot of Reagan Democrats in this country. Now, they might be in their 70s and 80s, but a lot of these people are Democrats because their parents were Democrats.
Yeah.
They believe in the right to free speech, and they believe in supporting and standing up for the little guy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get some of them off to the side, they will say, my party left me. I haven't gone anywhere.
Right. But there's probably a lot more than I know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think in 4 years max, it's going to take the Democrats to figure out that their message and their whole party has been hijacked by some loonies.
Yeah.
So that means the pendulum is going to swing back from the hard left to center left. But whenever that is, I just tell people, look, we're doing over 52 public events a year. And when we're staffing a booth, we have moderate Democrats and libertarians and never Trumpers and Trumpers. We have all these people from all these backgrounds, but they care about three things: term limits, fiscal restraint, controlling scope and jurisdiction, or stopping unfunded mandates. And so I tell people, really, I don't tell this to a legislator. I'm much more of a conservative than I am a Republican. So.
I am as well. And, going back to what you were saying earlier, Diana, when I had a situation, again, it was with my state rep, where her chief of staff was looking at our website during the meeting, and oh my gosh, all that came up were conservatives and Republicans. And that's something I know that COS National is addressing, and that they understand the need in a state like Ohio, and a state like Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, we need to show Democrat support, and we have been given assurance that this is something that is on the docket at national, and we really appreciate that.
We absolutely are going to need it. That's for sure.
Well, the low-hanging fruit has already been picked.
Yeah.
No disrespect to the red states.
Right. And if you do the math, you're going to have at least 3 blue states come
for
along.
sure.
But
right.
I don't think you're as far as you think you are. Wisconsin passed; they're just to the north.
That's true. Right.
And you know what? I travel through Madison and Milwaukee quite a bit, and as crazy as that gets, there's still people that live around those areas that are like, "No, we're not going to do that."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a good
and
point.
so I think you're a lot closer than you think. I don't think there's one way that you can just characterize Democrats are like this. I think that once they think of term limits because they were first taught to not like them. But the more you think about it, if we give people lengthy careers in DC, let's say 24 years of being a federal manager, of 5 employees or above, or a Supreme Court justice, or some type of federal judge, or you're a career manager at EPA, or you're in Congress, or what have you, 24 years or something in that ballpark is a nice, meaty career. And a lot of people are looking to make a change to something else after a while. But at the end of the day, I like to always tell our legislators, especially Democrats, look at the star power we have on both sides of the aisle in our Capitol. It really is important for us to get these superstars up to the big leagues where they can do their thing, because right now none of them have had an opportunity to run for Illinois' 17 congressional seats, because we have 80 and 90-year-old people in Illinois that just think they're supposed to be a congressman, a congresswoman for life. And I'm like, oh, brother, please.
Yeah, it's funny to me that I can talk about superstars, these long-term career Congress people in Washington. I can name so many of them, but I can't name the ones that are adjacent to my federal, district.
Right.
So, because I don't know who they are, because they haven't been around long enough. They're not as powerful, and the powerful ones get a lot of attention. The fact that I can name them, and you know who they are, it's unbelievable to me, because there's so many I can't, even in Ohio. So that's a lot of power, and they need to move on out. And for some reason they don't.
Well, Ted Cruz just got reelected to the Senate, and $100 million was spent by both totally on both sides. That how much one seat in Congress, whether you're House or Senate, is worth. $100 million. That tells you the amount of money that's flowing through that.
That is astonishing.
It is. Go ahead, Barry.
It really is.
If you look at, whatever state it is, whether it's our state, New York, California, Ohio, there are major population centers that tend to be highly Democrat, but that is changing. And we are seeing it very clearly in Illinois. We have locked arms with a predominantly minority group called ChicagoRed.org. And you may have seen a couple of their prominent folks on Laura Ingram's show and some of the other Fox News programs. They are very much under the valid impression that since the 2024 election showed the Republicans making major gains in Illinois, in the city of Chicago, that the lock that the Democrat Party has had on the city and the state is going to be breaking. And some of these folks are going to be in the power positions going forward. So I'm sure you've seen them on TV.
No, I have not, but that's good news. And heck, I'll take a Kennedy Democrat or Reagan Democrat any day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's refreshing.
And at the end of the day, they're Americans. They're just like you and me. That,
Yeah.
you know, they might have come to their conclusions differently through a different path, but come on, we all want clean water, clean air, good education. But I think that it's the name calling is over. The cancel culture is over. The attack on free speech is over. I think once you become a grandparent, you really don't care what people think. You just care about the future of your own flesh and blood and your nieces and nephews, because you realize your own mortality, and you're like, you know, you realize other people really don't think that much about you anyway. So who cares?
Well, on that note, we can wrap this up, gentlemen. You have been wonderful guests. I am so glad you came out to discuss this with me tonight. And I know there's other states that'll be interested in watching either its entirety or if and sections. However, we end up using this in the COS Today live stream. I'm not sure, but it sure was good to have you. And you brought some really good information. And it's actually very uplifting, and it's very good news. So I'm glad that you have had such, that you've been brave enough to not care what people think of you, I guess, and go out there and recognize that the Democrats are not so different. And that's a great message. And it makes things a lot less scary, really. And it makes them feel a lot more approachable. So that is really good news. So good luck to you in Illinois. And we'll see you later.
Thank you for having us, Diana.
Very interesting what that interview that Diana did. That Republican group out of Chicago that Barry was talking about, I've seen some reports on them. Have you seen those, Ken?
I have seen growing reports on that. Obviously, the ouster of the previous mayor, and what they're finding now is that you could actually vote in a worse candidate.
Right.
They've done that, and I think the writing's on the wall for not only him, but I do see people in the Chicago area fed up with it all, and you know, I think that's what it comes down to.
Boy, I tell you, if they can change that in Chicago and get a more conservative administration in there, that could change the whole state.
The whole state, and then think that you can actually imagine, wow, maybe there's hope for California and New York too, you know. I mean, at this point, you've got the good old governor out there starting a podcast now, so obviously he's looking to change his feathered headdress. You know, at this point, I think he feels that he needs to show something different. You know, whether it's for a presidential run or not, it doesn't really matter at this point.
Yeah.
But I think people, even in California, there's been some reports on the fact that there's a lot more red out there than we're aware of, and you know, that could eventually happen in California too. You know, but I think those two gentlemen had some good points about the fact that, you know, when in the bottom line is we're all Americans, and I think the sooner we get past all this, you know, labels and censoring and all this stuff, it is finally all behind us. If we can all finally just agree, and it may take some time, like I say, at this point, to really get to a point where we see a good economy and everybody's feeling good, and we screen out some of these people that basically, you know, that it's a small percentage of people that at this point that just are not going to go along at all. I mean, they're there. So I think it's got good possibilities that way. And another thing that Diane is saying is we are going to need that in Convention of States. We are going to need some Democrats, and I'd like to see more Democrats joining the cause. You know, that we've been pushing along. And I'm on the conservative side. I hate to call myself a Republican because we have just as many stooges on that side, I think, than we want to admit. But you know, I think it's a matter of really coming down to the point that, hey, let's use some common sense and do what's best for the country.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Kent, let's shift gears here a little bit. Let's take a look at what is going on nationally with Convention of States. They put out a weekly live stream that we try to tap into on every broadcast, kind of keep us up to date on what's going on nationally. So let's take a quick look at the latest one here.
Week's episode of COS Now, the Convention of States movement is making waves across the country. Kansas just made history, and COS legislation is gaining traction in multiple states. From packed hearings to major legislative wins, we'll be breaking down all the latest victories and what comes next on COS Now.
What do we want? When do we want it?
Welcome to another episode of COS Now, the show where we break down all the latest news in the Convention of States movement. I'm your host, Rachel Martin, and we've got a lot of good news to cover today. Before we do, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell. First up, Convention of States scored an unprecedented victory in the Kansas Senate. For the first time ever, the Kansas Senate successfully adopted the resolution with a vote of 29-11. Here's the lead legislative champion for COS in Kansas, Senator Thompson.
We are at wit's end with the out-of-control federal government and our inability to control it in any way, even through elections. And so Article 5 provides us the only relief that we have. The founders put it into the Constitution for a purpose. Even though it hasn't been exercised yet, it is a purpose that is important and necessary.
The resolution still needs to move through the House side of the Kansas legislature, but this historic milestone signals great momentum for the COS Kansas team. Earlier in the week, the Wyoming House Education Committee heard public testimony on COS Action's Article 5 application. Here's a COS volunteer testifying in favor.
The biggest problem is people confuse Convention of States to propose amendments as to automatically changing the Constitution. We got together, 800 of us, and said, we're going to take away the Second Amendment. Would you guys go with that? No. Neither will anybody else. It's to propose amendments. The states have the final say-so. People are smart. A lot of politicians in Washington think we're not. People are. And when you get them together, we come up with good ideas. And this whole thing here, it literally is just to get us together to propose amendments to help control the federal government.
Unfortunately, we received word late Friday night that the Wyoming House voted down COS by a vote of 25-32. The COS Wyoming team got so close to victory, and we want to congratulate them on their progress. Their hard work is sure to pay off in a future session. Meanwhile, on Wednesday, the Iowa House State Government Committee also advanced our Article 5 application to the House floor with a vote of 10-7, clearing the way for debate in the full Iowa House. Later that day, a committee in Nebraska heard from the public on why the unicameral should pass a clean resolution with no expiration date. COS President Mark Meckler was on the ground in Lincoln to provide expert testimony.
Y'all passed this particular application several years ago, and the intent to be here today is to remove the sunset clause. There are several states that passed this application with a sunset clause: Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas. Missouri and Oklahoma have both removed their sunset clause. Texas is in the process, I believe, will remove their sunset clause this session. The reason for that is we believe liberty never expires, first of all, and this is a fight for liberty. It is a fight to rebalance the jurisdiction between the federal and state governments.
But Rhode Island wouldn't allow the Midwestern states to have all the action. On Thursday evening, COS supporters showed up at a legislative hearing in consideration of our Article 5 application. To cap off the hearing, a brand new supporter had this exchange with the committee.
I had not heard about this before, so when she just gave those stats of 59% of people, I wasn't even included in that. I fully support this. I think this is a great, I hadn't heard about it before. So I think if more Rhode Islanders heard about this, more Rhode Islanders would be writing into their senators and their reps in support. Somehow we need to get these guys on TV.
They're on TV right now.
Well, I mean, like out there on a billboard, on social media, you know, because I think a lot of people don't know about this.
Well, I think all of us every year since this has been introduced have gotten more and more emails on the subject matter. So your work getting the word out is going somewhere.
To see more of the proceedings, you can catch up on all the events at conventionofstates.com/COS Live. And that's all for this week's recap. Thank you all for watching. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you same time next week here on COS Now.
All right. Well, like I said, we try to capture each one of those updates every week. So we'll look forward to episode number 10 on our next weekly broadcast. So let's start, Ken. Let's start wrapping things up here. Coming up is the next broadcast is our roundtable coming up on the 24th of March, and the topic is going to be faith in America. So I think that'll be a panel discussion, and that should be very interesting because that is kind of a hot topic in our country now. Should I say maybe the return of faith in America? So ought to be a good discussion.
Yeah, I think there'll be some statistics to show that has dropped off, and maybe that's making its return. So yeah, I would agree. It looks like it's going to be a good topic.
Yeah. Then following the 24th would be our last broadcast in March, which will be on the 31st of March. This will be part 3 of Understanding Tariffs with Brett Sterling. Then I've got a good interview that I did on education in the state of Ohio. This is with the state director of the Americans for Prosperity organization in Ohio. COS has done a lot of things with them. We've done a lot of activities with them here in Indiana, and I think nationwide. They're a large organization, Americans for Prosperity. They have money, so they're able to do a lot of things that we're not able to do. But so I sat down with the state director in Ohio, Donovan O'Neill, and talked to him about what they're doing with regard to education legislation in the state of Ohio. Should have another segment on Meet the Founders with Larry Hudson, another one of our contributors, and we'll be talking more about George Washington. So we're right hot and heavy into the Revolutionary War now, so it's getting interesting. Another Dave's Daily Dose with Dave Punt out of Minnesota. And of course, COS Basics with John Ackerman. So big show coming up on the 31st of March. All right. Once again, if anyone has any comments or questions after our broadcast tonight, feel free to drop us an email at raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. Well, Ken, let's bring on John Ackerman, who does our COS Basics series. John's another contributor for COS Today, and this particular one he's still focusing on our core values for Convention of States, and this one happens to be on the meaning of values. So let's take a look at what John has to say here.
John Ackerman for Convention of States, Indiana. This is video number 7 of COS Basics, and I want to recap our core values. The first 6 videos, in each one I talked at length about each core value. And just to review, we are committed to constitutional originalism. We want to foster responsible self-governance. We cultivate servant leaders. We strive to be kind. We want to produce meaningful results. And we revere Judeo-Christian values. These, in a nutshell, are the core values of Convention of States. But I ask myself, and maybe you've asked, what is a value? And this video, in addition to recapping the 6 core values, is to give you an understanding of why I believe, and why COS, I think, believes that values are so important. We have these 6 core values, but what is a value? One of the more preeminent thinkers and writers on values of the last century was Brian Hall, a man whose books I read with enthusiasm, and a man I had the opportunity to meet one time when he led a workshop in my hometown. And according to Brian Hall, a value has 4 characteristics. And so, first of all, a value has to be freely chosen from among known alternatives. If it's forced on you, if you have no choice, it's not a value. It's something that you do or something that you observe. But in order for it to be a value, it has to be a free choice. Secondly, not only freely chosen, but acted upon. If you say, well, I have a value of good dental hygiene, but you never brush and never floss, it's not really a value because you're not acting on it. For it to be a value, it has to be something you do something about. It changes your behavior. So a value is something that is freely chosen and acted upon. And then it must contribute to the self's meaning. That is to say, it becomes part of your self-understanding. This is who I am. And to use the dental hygiene thing, part of who you are is you're a person who values dental hygiene, and you have clean teeth, and you fight off periodontal disease, gum disease, and all those kinds of things because you believe in and practice dental hygiene. And so it is part of who you are, part of your identity. And then finally, for it to be a value, it must enhance the self's worth. So you see, a value is a positive thing. If you go around killing people who don't believe with your religion, that's not a value. That's a negative thing. For something to be a value, it has to be worth enhancing. It has to enhance your self-worth. And so I offer you these understandings of how important the 6 core values are to Convention of States. These are things that we have freely chosen from among alternatives. These are things we act upon. These are things that determine our self-understanding, our meaning, our identity, and they are things that enhance our worth and our worthiness and our worthwhileness. So as you think about your own values, think about those 4 characteristics of a value. And as you think about Convention of States, think, this is really who we are. We have chosen these values. We act upon them. They define our self-understanding, our meaning, and they enhance our worth.
Oh, John does a good job on that.
Yeah, the basics. Yep.
Yeah.
I wanted to tell you, in your describing the 31st show coming up there on March 31st, you hit a memory point in my brain that brought back the phrase, "a really big show." I know you know who that is, and maybe
Ed Sullivan, right?
Ed Sullivan show, yeah, and
really big show.
And I don't know whether you remember or not, but that was a completely live show.
Yes. Oh, yes, I remember that well.
You think of what wrong on a completely live show, and I just that statement or that phrase just kept coming back to me as you were talking about the 31st. So next week we're planning a really big show as well, but for the 31st, for a really big show.
Yes. Good memory there, Ken. That's excellent. That's excellent. All right, Ken. Well, let's put a wrap and let's bring Maringo Mike on here and let him sum things up for us tonight, because we do this to get people interested in Convention of States, and we want people to join Convention of States and grow the grassroots. That's why we do this. So so we always let Maringo Mike remind everybody of that objective that we're after here, and like he says, why don't you take the opportunity to kick it up a notch and volunteer, be a volunteer. So we got any comments or anything, Ken, that we need to address? Or
nothing since David's comment, other than
okay.
some brief chitter chatter, and hopefully we'll see some emails. And other than that, that's it.
All right. Well, guys, folks, have a good evening, and look forward to seeing you next week on our roundtable. Ought to be a very good topic and good discussion. So, everyone, have a good evening.
Night.
Maringo Mike here with a reminder that our work to raise the bar on making our federal government accountable to the people is only halfway done. We need to grow our grassroots army of citizens every day to fulfill the vision of our forefathers and keep our land free and prosperous. So, if you have never signed the petition to show your support, use that QR code and do that now. While you're there, why not kick it up a notch and volunteer for many of the positions available where your talents can make a difference as we march into a new year. Thank you, and God bless.